That one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
All right, folks, got another one here for you. And boy, this one's really interesting. Seeing this articles, plural, on this particular topic makes us actually look like we know what the hell we're talking about. So, got two articles here for you. Very, very interesting. And actually got some stuff in here that I did not really fully know or understand or anything of that nature. But wanted to talk about this really quickly. Looks like the state of Texas is fed up with our dear friends, the Aoudad. And as you know, if you've listened to this show, we've actually talked about this a lot and the pros and cons of the Aoudads and things of that nature. Well, this was published on June 10th, and so just a day ago. And this is a big deal, folks. And the title of the article says, Texas adds Aoudad to the list of animals you can hunt from a helicopter. Very, 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 very interesting. So I am going to summarize two articles here for you. One from Outdoor Life, which I love, by the way. Obviously, we are not sponsored by Outdoor Life, but they have a great online articles. And I really enjoy following their material. It always seems to be really relevant to what I want to listen to. And of course, this one is just right up the alley. So I'm going to summarize this one. Then I got another one here from the Texas Tribune Daily Newsletter, and which basically is a thing that's all about Texas news. So I'll read you a couple of summaries here on these kinds of things, then we'll talk about some things because I think it's really, really interesting. And I encourage you to look this up. The Outdoor Life article, the front cover, of course, has that title that the title of the article, of course, but then in the picture below, it's got a picture of, I don't know, 30, 40 Aoudad, and it's hysterical because I'm looking at some of these sheep, and of course they're hauling ass, but a lot of them look absolutely enormous. So they look like rams. They're absolutely huge. Very, very interesting. So, all right. So again, we'll kind of summarize this article. So, Senate Bill 1245 was passed by both state legislative chambers and was signed into law by Abbott in May. This will go into effect on September 1st. The bill expands Texas aerial wildlife management permit system, which will include aerial culling to the feral swine population, and which of course they refer to as pork chopping, which is just brilliant. There's no way the federal government came up with that, but an incredible name. Kind of interesting here. It talks about, and I did not know this statistic. And again, this is a government study, so you can trust it as much as you want to. But this is really, really interesting, and you know where this is going. They use aerial culling. Okay, so they're obviously the state realizes that the Aoudad are a problem in these extremely fragile ecosystems. So of course, as we always talked about, it's a double-edged sword. But it's really interesting. Listen to this statistic right here. A 2019 USDA study found that helicopter hog hunting, also called pork chopping, has successfully reduced hog numbers by at least 31%. Now that is incredible. I had no idea that it was that effective. Now I'm curious, and I would love to dig into the study a little bit more, because 31%. Oh, okay. At what portion of the state? What what was this mainly conducted? Was this a Central Texas thing? Was this an East Texas thing? I wouldn't think so. Was this a North Central Texas thing? I don't know. Hill country. Where was it done? I'm really, really curious, because I think that depending on where you are in our wonderful state will dictate your success rate. Obviously, because out in where you've got predominantly mesquite, obviously you're going to have you're going to have a hell of a lot better chance at being successful at shooting hogs compared to somewhere like East Texas, okay, where you've got a huge canopy. And listen, those hogs aren't stupid. They'll sit there and hold up, and they will wait until you've gone on, and then they'll start their business again. So, but again, interesting. A 2019 study done by the USDA successfully reduced hog numbers by 31%. That is absolutely fascinating to me. The article then continues on. It talks about, where they were, what talks about Aoudad and kind of the history of them. And a lot of people understand this. They were imported in the 1950s primarily for an exotic hunting ranch. And this other article actually gives the actual number. And of course, then it talks about the thing that I've been talking about is, the effect it's got on mule deer, bighorn sheep, things of that nature. Of course, it also talks about the habitat destruction. A sponsor in here, Ed Morales Jr., basically says Aoudad sheep bring sheer destruction. They eat everything. They spread disease and push out native species. Well, that's very true, Ed. You're 100, or Mr. Morales. You're exactly correct there. But let's not forget the other thing that they do. They provide a substantial and growing hunting opportunities for people who have the financial ability to do so, and they bring a hell of a lot of revenue to a lot of these, especially remote West Texas towns. So let's not forget about that. I understand the ecosystem is very, very fragile. And everybody knows I'm super sensitive to that, but you're forgetting a big piece here, and that is the impact they've got on the local small town Texas. And, talking about the fragility of that particular environment. When you talk about cattle production, okay, and stocking rates and all that kind of stuff, it typically will talk about a unit. Okay, so how many units can you fit per acre? Okay, and of course a unit is a one mama cow and a calf. Okay, well, on areas in Central Texas, depending on the range conditions and the time of year, you can have anywhere from 6 to 10 units per acre. Okay, out there in West Texas, where these Aoudad are living, along with the mule deer, along with some cattle, okay, and the antelope and all that, 1 unit per 100 acres. Let that sink in. 1 unit per 100 acres. Okay, that's crazy. So that'll tell you how that place out there is very, 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 very fragile. And so, of course, it goes on to say here, high numbers of Aoudad in dry environments can significantly and negatively impact on browse resources of the desert ecosystem is extremely fragile. and it cannot support thousands and thousands of animals on them long term. But then that's very, very true. It's interesting, kind of diverting here again. One of the efforts that Texas Parks and Wildlife is doing, and like the Texas Bighorn Society, that may not be the right name of the organization, but is that they are actually building water guzzlers. Okay, they're building water guzzlers out here in these desert environments for the mule deer. You know, obviously hordes of other animals use them, mountain lions, so on and so forth. And of course, you know, I think it's crazy, but that's kind of one of the problems too. Is that you're trying to help, you know, these bighorn sheep and these mule deer. Okay, when it's fine when they come to these guzzlers. Okay, and you see the pictures. Well, I encourage you to go look at them. They're normally in very beautiful locations. You know, you'll see a handful of deer. You'll see 7 or 8 bighorn sheep. But when the Aoudad come to them, there's 40 of them. Right? They're herd animals. It's horrible. You know, and again, you're talking about a place that gets a couple inches rain a year, and so that water is extraordinarily precious. So a herd of Aoudad in a dry year can destroy a guzzler. We're bringing it out. Okay. Here is a very interesting fact that they are estimating that more than 30,000 Aoudad currently roam the state of Texas. That is incredible. Okay, and here it is. That is a major increase from the 31 animals originally released in Armstrong County in 1957. I actually thought that would have been a hell of a lot sooner. I didn't think it'd be in Armstrong County. I thought it would have been down in Kerr, where you see a lot of that happening. And here's a quote from a West Texas rancher. Again, and I would take this as gospel. Obviously, this individual is incredibly versed when it comes to understanding the animals and whatnot. And he goes on. His name is Warren Cood. Says a coyote is not going to take one down. The lion could take one down, but it's going to be a fight. So they're breeding faster than you can manage them with straight hunt, this West Texas rancher said. And of course, it goes on to talk about the spread of disease, things of that nature. Of course, now here, this is in this particular article, again, on Outdoor Life, this is the only thing that they really mention about, talking about the impact. But again, it's not talking about small town Texas. It's talking about, potential hunters. And it says, here it goes. It says, Texas Aoudad hold plenty of appeal for hunters, whether they choose to pursue them from a chopper or stalk them on foot, because the animals live in rugged country. They offer, quote, would-be sheep hunters the chance to pursue a challenging species without waiting a lifetime to draw a tag or pay tens of thousands of dollars to hunt native sheep. Okay, and so that is a very, very valid point. Okay, I mean, you can put in for the Texas Bighorn, and you got 1 in a million shot. Okay, you can put in for a New Mexico Doll sheep or an Alaskan Doll sheep, and you may be too old by the time you get it. And even when you do get it, just because you have the tag doesn't mean you just march your happy ass on up there and get it done. You've got to hire an outfitter, and I think that's a minimum of $10,000. So there is a lot of stuff that you got to take into consideration. So that is the Outdoor Life article. Again, no mention whatsoever about the impact on small town Texas. Now, again, probably not intentional. Okay, but it is. It's a little frustrating to me because again, that is extremely important. Moving on to the Texas Tribune's article. It's interesting that rancher that we heard from earlier, he also says these sheep are not known to be, quote, fence jumpers. In actuality, they trample fences, which can cause thousands of dollars of damage. Okay, that is very interesting. Okay, because sinking the fence or sinking the T-post in the solid rock is tough to begin with, but having them constantly blow through your fence is a real problem. And it's interesting they talk about this not being fence jumpers and actually trampling. They are extremely aggressive. One of the more effective ways of hunting Aoudad, I'm told, in areas I'm told are that there is people will actually go and have a piece of pipe by their feeder, and they will bang on their heavy duty feeder to mimic the sound of an Aoudad ram slamming his horns into a feeder to get it to drop feed. Okay, so that'll just tell you how aggressive it is. So imagine what a thirsty Aoudad would do potentially to a water guzzler. Mind you, a water guzzler that takes hours and hours to get to fix. Okay, you got to think about that. They really are very, very, very destructive. They can be very, very, very destructive animals. Something else that was pointed out in this particular article is talking about how aggressive they are. As one gentleman sits here and talks about how they're physically displacing mule deer. Well, that's no surprise because the ability, they're extremely aggressive. And mule deer love them, but they ain't the most aggressive animal in the world. I mean, the whitetail does that to them, where they overlap a lot. Also talked potential crossbreeding with bighorn sheep. Don't know that that's been actually physically documented yet. I don't even know if that's possible, but of course you never know. Really, really kind of interesting here as well. And this is really, really, really interesting. A particular outfitter, he owns West Texas Hunting Organization. He talks about how the cost of hunting Aoudad has risen significantly. Okay, how these hunts are now $1,800. Now you're looking at several $1,000s to get out there and hunt these particular animals. And he goes on to say, by the time you pay for a pilot, fuel, and gas for the helicopter service to go up, you're not going to be shooting babies, young rams, or ewes. You're out there to shoot trophies. So that, there you go. That is very, very interesting. You obviously having a mix, like hunting whitetail or really any species, trying to take a mixed bag of the various sexes is very important to affect your carrying capacity and all that kind of stuff. So will the state mandate that if you take off in a helicopter before you can shoot a ram, you got to shoot a ewe? I don't know. I do not know, but that is very interesting. Something else is, what happens if you're out there in a helicopter and you're out there trying to get close to Aoudad? Because again, remember, all they're going to do is run because there's really no cover, right? And what happens if you just happen upon a mule deer and you scare the shit out of that thing and he ends up falling in some crevice and dies? I mean, I guess it is what it is, right? But that could have a negative effect on him. So it's just a lot to take into consideration here. But really, I think what this is doing, in conclusion, the fact that they are now we are quote allowed, which always never should have been a problem as far as being allowed is concerned, because it's a free state, right? That's what we do. Okay, in Vermont you ask for permission. In Texas you just do it. But one of the things that is going to be really, really interesting here is, September 1, this goes into effect, and they get out there in a couple of years from now, they take some measurements. How effective is this going to be? Well, I think it's going to be effective. I do think that they're going to have to take some ewes. And I am not surprised. I am surprised a little bit that they have not put that into effect. That maybe they give people quotas. I don't know how they would do that because they're kind of isolated to different areas. But it is very, very interesting. So and I'll tell you this much right now: is us as hunters, if we don't do our duty here and take care of these animals, like kind of from a hog perspective, I think the state will come in there and do something because that ecosystem is that fragile. So, that's going to be really interesting. I can't wait to see some video from that and how are they going to do this? It's going to be interesting. I mean, harvesting one is okay, totally get it, but then what are you going to do to recover this thing? You are allowed to recover them, the article says. So, of course, you don't want to shoot something and let it lay. So anyway, this will be extraordinarily interesting to see how this plays out. I don't. It will be very, very interesting. Anyways, that is all I have for you today. Again, it's getting hot. Watch those feeders. Watch the water. But hey, dove season's almost around the corner. Remember, everybody, support your local feed store. Need you more now than they ever have. I say that every single time, but it's definitely still the truth. And go Texas, baby.
Well, I hope the Bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Anna. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the Bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.